Welcome to Financial Freedom with the Flipping Flanagans, where we help real estate agents and already successful business professionals create legacy wealth through real estate. We go by the Flipping Flanagans, and we don't actually flip houses very often. When you drop the F bomb a little too often, add that to a real estate background, you get the Flipping Flanagans. We actually buy property to hold and see long term gains protected from inflation while seeing amazing benefits from appreciation and depreciation. See you on the other side. All right, welcome back. Today I have Jessica Hensley on the call. And Jessica, I'll let you actually introduce yourself because you have quite the background and there's no way I can do it justice.
It's so funny. You hit record and I'm like, wanted to do my automatic introduction. I'm Jessica Hensley with Real Estate Mega, but that's who I am. So Jessica Hensley and the group that I run is Real Estate Mega Moms, but also licensed realtor for almost 21 years. I got licensed in 2003. And yeah, so we were talking about investing because obviously Jamie is the master at investing. And I was telling her, yeah, I used to have rentals, but here's what happened to me. So that's, yeah.
Yes. So it's so funny. We are both accidental landlords. We've just found out. So
Mhm.
I just want to preface this conversation with I did want to interview you because you said I had rentals in the past.
Mhm.
And I was like, as somebody who's licensed, doing as much volume as you are, it's really beneficial for you to own some assets that are, able to be depreciated. And so her and I got to talking about that, and it was interesting. So I just want to say that me and Brad have almost given up multiple times. We've almost thrown the towel. I can remember like days where me and Brad were like stomping around the house. Like, not okay, I was probably the one stomping around the house, let's be real. He was probably just sitting calmly because that's what he does. He just like he doesn't say anything, and then I just get more mad. Like, why don't you want to fight with me? No, just I would deal with the contractors a lot of times. And so there would be often times when, budgets weren't going as we expected, or contractors weren't showing up like we thought they should, or there we'd find our contractors sleeping in the driveway, things like that. And so there was many times like that. And I like to be real because I don't think investing in real estate is like an easy way to make money or anything like that. I think it's hard work, but I think the sacrifice is worth the reward. And so
Yeah.
let's dig into, your story with being a landlord and just a little bit, the background even that you shared just right before this call would be awesome.
Yeah. So I bought my first property in 2007. I got licensed in '03. I was 18. So 4 years later, 22, and I was like, I really feel like I have to buy. It's kind of silly to sell people houses and not own my own house.
Mm-hmm.
So we bought our first house, and uh it was interesting. We were in a obviously starter home. So and this is 20, I mean, this is a long time ago. What is that? 18 years ago, something like that. So I'm terrible at math today, apparently. But anyway, the price point was low. So we were looking at like 40,000 or less. And we came
I don't even
across
know if I've ever seen that.
well, we're in Southeast Kansas. And so I found this property, 2 bedroom, 1 bath. It was like 800 square feet. It was tiny. But it was a solid, well-built home. It was a rental. It was used currently as a rental when we purchased it. And they're like, we offered them 25 and they said, well, why don't you pay 35 and we'll throw in this other property with it. And so we're like, well, okay. So this other property was a single wide 2 bedroom trailer house that was okay. Like the floors weren't falling in or anything. It was okay, surprisingly, for $10,000.
Yeah, I
And
love it. You got a gift with purchase when buying a house.
yeah. And so the landlord, the owner, they were telling us she had to buy the two properties because they wanted to get out of the business, I guess. So we're like, okay, fine. It appraised for 35. So we got one loan on the one property. The rental, the trailer house, didn't have a lien against it. So that was really cool too. But we rented it. It was never vacant other than the times that we had to kick somebody out or whatever. But as soon as we cleaned it back up, we rented it right away. Like it wasn't a month that went by that it wasn't rented. And I think our payment, I know our payment was less than 400, and I'm pretty sure we charged like 250 or 300. So it virtually made our payment for 10 years. And I mean, there was a lot of terrible things that happened. One, somebody just skipped out because they were running from the law. They ran to Oklahoma right on the border. They left all of their stuff. So I went through their stuff, and like, I don't know if this is legal or whatever, but they weren't there and they weren't paying me. So I kept what I wanted to keep and I trashed the rest. We did this. I mean, I did this myself. And then,
Yeah, and I'll say, depending on your state, there's different, every state has different rules around that. So like our state require, we have somebody who handles this now, but like in our state, I think you hold on to the stuff, you have to inventory it for like 14
mm-mm.
days. And then if they don't come pick up their stuff, then you can get rid of it. I can't remember.
And we gave them
Don't quote me
notice,
on that date. I don't know exactly how many days, but
but they didn't want to come back because they probably would have been arrested, I
right.
guess. So,
Yep. You want
anyways,
to do that.
so they left their stuff. That was so annoying. And then the next time I let somebody move in there, well, I don't know if it was that time. We probably had four tenants, probably maybe five, the whole time we owned it. But one time they let their water be turned off for over 2 weeks. And that was disgusting. They were, using the bathroom in the tub. That was so gross. So then the next one, I think I let that guy clean the property. I didn't even clean it. He moved in, which that should have been a red flag. And this was the one that burned it down. So he was cooking that in the trailer. So yeah. So after that, and my husband is not a he has no desire to help fix anything. Like, he is a handyman. He has built houses before. He's been in construction, but he doesn't want to do that. So it was all on me. I mean, I was the one collecting rent. Like, I remember even carrying a gun with me because I felt like kind of unsure, which I
Absolutely.
think
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the smartest thing to do or not, but um anyway, yeah, that was kind of a whole lifetime ago. But ever since then, we got rid of that. It burned down. We got the insurance money from it, and my husband's like, no more rentals. We're not going to do it again. So, but
Yeah.
I'm changing his mind because we're paying taxes every year, and you're telling me this is going to be a write-off, and I believe it's how we're going to create wealth for our family. So,
It absolutely is. So depreciation is a magical thing. And that's actually how we became an accidental landlord. We rented like my husband and I separated for a little while, actually got divorced. And then we got back together and I lived in a 2 bedroom, 2 bath house that I had bought just because I was like, I needed a place for me and my daughter. And my goal was to have it paid off by the time she went to college and then we could use the funds for whatever. Well, we got back together, we listed it for rent. It rented right away. We had great tenants. We've always had, actually, we still own that property. We've always had great tenants in that house. And I always tell people too, with your primary residence, now there are plenty of horror stories with people renting out their primary residence. You do have to detach yourself emotionally. Like, but I will say this specific property, knock on wood, we've owned it since 2000. I can't do math either. I think around 2014, if I remember. You guys go back through the podcast. I say it before. Now I'm like, all the years are running together. But bought it, lived in it for a couple of years, and then we started renting it out, I believe, in 2016. And we've always had really great tenants. But I think about like who I was as a tenant when I lived there is like I was super responsible. It's in a great location. As far as like commute and stuff to, for people for working, it's convenient to shopping. Like you have to consider some of those factors, like what attracted me to the neighborhood is attracting the tenant to the neighborhood as well. And so it's been pretty fascinating to like keep that property. And then, and I will say my energy, like if you feel like something's going to be a bad investment from the beginning, it probably is going to be a bad investment. Like I talk to people all the time who are like, this is, and you're faith, right? Driven, and I'm faith driven. And I also know that the devil will come in, and when he knows you're on to something great, I mean, he knew you were about to dominate the world with rentals, right? And he's like, if we burn this down, probably going to stop you for a little
Yeah.
while.
And the
And
thing is, we were money
right.
ahead. with
Yeah,
it. So like even though we had to evict people and we never took anyone to court, like all I ever had to do was say you need to get out of here, and they did, which was really cool.
that's really cool.
As a property manager, I did have to take people to court, just like maybe two. But anyway, I even though we had those things, it was still a good, I'm still glad we did it because it made our
Yes,
payment all that time, you know?
right. And that's where I think the biggest, feedback we have for people oftentimes is, but look at how, you came ahead, you came out ahead. And we so often focus on something that happened that it's like we make it way, but yeah, it sucks, right? But it doesn't like, if it's only going to be that bad if you put the energy into it and say this was the worst experience ever and this was this and this was this. But if you look at it and go like what you just said, we came out ahead. It was actually when we learned a lot from it. You learned a ton even before this call. You were like, this is, we know now that
Mhm.
a higher quality property is going to attract a higher quality tenant, and that's absolutely the truth. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, what you had mentioned that you also, not your own properties, but you also have also managed properties. So what was something
Yeah.
that you learned through that experience?
Yeah, so we have managed properties. I've done some like by the room for like turnaround with the refinery, where it was more of a short-term rental or mid-term, I guess, rental situation. And then we also manage, I listed a condo complex, like it was 15 unit complex, I think, three different buildings. And I sold it, but part of the deal was I said, I'll manage it for you and I'll make sure it's filled, because when he purchased it, it was like 50% vacancy because
Yeah,
there was for maintenance, and the lady just didn't want to have a property manager. She just didn't want to market it. So for the first year, we managed it and we filled it up within 2 months, I think, which was really cool. But what I learned through that process is that I didn't even know that I could check somebody's background and check their credit. And like we just learned how we approached it. We would market it before we would even meet with them. We sent them a link. We used Rent Tech, or we used at that time Rent Tech. By the way, I heard that there was a new maybe it's just our MLS, but we're part of Kansas City Association, and they were sharing that there was something that we could use with them to for rentals for people to get their background checked and credit checked. Do you guys have that with your MLS as well?
we have. So this is really interesting. You bring this up. It's what is that called? Forewarn? Have you
Oh,
used?
it wasn't called that. It was called Rent Something. But anyway, that's really
No,
cool.
we
So
don't
I
have
guess
that.
check with your MLS, because or your association, because there may be even something available to you. But we would send the link to them and they would have to pay for it. So there was no cost to
Yeah,
us. And we would get the results. I mean, they authorized us to get the results at that point. And we just went with the parameters that our landlord gave us. And obviously, as an owner, you would set your own parameters. And I think that's the other thing that we learned is, take emotion and heart out of it, have standards and boundaries and stick to it, because
yeah,
everyone has a sob story. Everybody has a dog that just died or whatever, you
yeah,
know? So
yep. I have been told like when I'm helping people who are buying their initial properties, I actually had a conversation with somebody just yesterday. He called and he's like, runs a situation by me, and I said, what's their, are their credit and their income qualified? And if they are, that ultimately too, it's fair housing, right? You have to treat every single tenant. You can't change, based on, you can obviously have cosigners and all that, but you have to be really careful on treating anybody differently than the last tenant or whatever. So
that's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
yeah. So that's how, and when I'm talking to my property, when I'm coaching or teaching my property manager, because we've got a full-time person who works with us. And, she'll obviously we all have a heart. It is really hard when you hear a sob story and I want to help all these people. And that's something that, Brad and it's like the sooner we learn that it really simplified our business. And because unfortunately, none of the sob stories worked out. we fell for the sob stories for quite some time. So, and we ended up in some pretty sticky situations that, and it was unfortunate, but like, I remember we had a tenant that called and she's like, there's black mold all over the ceiling. And I like I was like freaking out. I'm like, what? And I went over there. There was not one, it was completely white.
Mm.
So there was like some drug issues and I'm looking around like, okay, I was like, I should have been a little bit more cautious before coming over here because me being naive, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a problem. I need to go over there and I need to fix it. And then I get over there and I just knew, I'm like, there's no way there's mold. Like she's only lived there, we had just painted, I mean, everything, there was no water issues, nothing. I'm like, it just kind of blew my mind. And she was like pointing at the ceiling to vents and telling me there's these black, you know, dark black stripes of mold. And one second. I'm so sorry. I can hear my son screaming at his game and I'm just gonna ask him to be quiet. One sec.
Oh, okay. I can hear him.
I was like, it is so distracting.
Yeah, I
I'll
understand.
cut that part. Maybe I'll leave it. Mom life.
We're moms, yeah. I
So,
do the same.
but that was a total, and her parents co-signed with her. And so it was a total sob story that we accepted her with a co-signer. So followed all the rules and everything that we would have allowed. But so anyways, my point with that is now when I have new tenant or new landlords that are going through it, they'll call me. They're like, oh my gosh, we had so many applicants and this is the situation. This is the one that we're thinking about accepting. But here's the thing. And I'm like, if you have to say, but here's the thing, and then you're about to defend this, whatever story, take that out. Just remove it. So if
Mm,
your boundaries allow, then okay, if it's outside of the income and the credit qualifications and the background check that you have in place, I'm sorry. Like for me, that's
yeah. Yeah. And I think as, I have definitely left opportunity on the table. We work with a lot of first-time home buyers. And so I've been watching and learning from your group already, Jamie, where you're like, well, a couple ways you're using it to generate leads, I think is
yeah,
brilliant. So the first time home buyers, people call to apply for our rental, then we can turn that conversation. Well, have you
yep,
thought about buying? Or, oh, I'm sorry, we filled that, but let's have the conversation about getting you approved for a loan, especially if
yep.
they already applied, like their credit, their background. Um, and then the other thing that I saw you did the other day, we place sellers in our rentals so they don't have to do a contingency. And I thought that is brilliant. That is brilliant.
It's so nice. And then they can they can get pods or whatever, load up all their stuff. And if you have a furnished rental, they get to stay in it Brad and I stayed in one of our own furnished rentals recently in Omaha. And the tenants moved out and we needed a place to crash for a month. And so we did. We got to take advantage of our own furnished rental. And then Steph today on my team tagged, she's somebody commented in a Papillion, one of the local groups here, said, does anyone have a rental? We sold our house too quickly. Now they've already got a realtor and stuff, but we still then we get to talk, we get to post our opportunity on that post. And here's the thing, your Facebook, everyone following that post sees it. So now you
Mm-hmm.
get the opportunity to share, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I've got furnished rental. So anyone else who happens to see that post with possibly the same thing in the back of their mind, now you've gotten in front of them.
Yeah. The other big win, I think, and why I want to get back into it, and why I'm glad we did in the first place, is my clients, if I can relate to them because I've also managed property, I've
Yeah.
also had to kick somebody out, I've also had to clean somebody's crap out of their house or whatever, like it just gives me that much more of a connection with the ideal clients that I want to work with too.
Absolutely. And I heard a rumor that your market still has affordable properties to buy.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, if anyone wants to buy investment property down here, the average price point in our market, I just checked, is 105,000. Now, yeah. And the thing is, you can buy a nice house, and yes, a starter house,
Yeah,
right,
right.
is in that budget, that price point. Luxury for us is like 300. So you can get a really nice house, 300, 400,000, where in most markets, that might buy you a starter house.
Yeah. Oh my, that is so awesome. That's actually what the price point was in Omaha when we started buying here. I paid 103,000 for that, the very first rental that we talked about at the beginning of this podcast. 103,000, and really, but bought my grandpa's house out of his estate. That one was 95,000. And
Yeah.
now that same house, it's like so crazy to me. We sold my grandpa's house for I think 185 3 years ago. So,
Mm,
almost doubled in value. But I think
yeah.
it's amazing that you can still buy properties where you're at that price
And
point.
we're like,
Get in touch with Jessica and her team. If
yeah, we'd love to
you're looking
help.
for great, a great price point.
Absolutely. And we're only like an hour and a half from Tulsa, hour and 15 minutes, about the same distance to Joplin, Kansas City, 2.5 hours, Wichita, 2.5 hours. We're 5 hours from Omaha, which that's still a pretty long drive, but we're very drivable to major cities. So it's kind of the small town feel. And the job market is probably the biggest drawback. There are opportunity here for some jobs, but I mean, it's drivable. I mean, I think in LA and places like that, your commute, even if you're just going 5 or 10 miles, it might be an hour long. So, it's all in how you look at it.
Right. That is crazy too. Like we have a property in the mountains and I got really used to driving. You just drive, everything's 40 minutes. So,
Yeah,
and it all depends on what your goals are. And like
yeah,
if you calculate, I'm always like when I'm working with a first time home buyer, because that's the same thing, like in Omaha, it's like, hey, why don't you look at 10 minutes out of town, and if the gas makes sense. Now, obviously, if you buy a fixer upper, you're updating it and you're taking on the gas and it ends up costing more. That doesn't always work. But if you can find something that's move-in ready and a little, very minimal maintenance, then it's like, okay, I can drive the commute. It doesn't bother me. And I come home to something that's not a project. Cause
yeah.
unfortunately for us, it's like when you're really in the city now to buy something that's convenient, you are going to end up they're buying a fixer upper because of the price point.
Mm.
So
Well,
just
and I
balancing
wonder
all that
that
out.
I'm gonna get some free coaching right now, Jamie, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking when we purchase now, because I at least want to buy one, but maybe up to five this year. We'll see. And my target or a couple of parameters I'm setting for myself is one, would I live there? So
Yeah.
that's key. I want to, be able to be proud of it that I would actually move in there. And it'll be between 80 and 120,000 is what I'm
Mhm.
thinking. And in that price point, I should be able to get between 1,000 and 1,400 maybe in rent. So, I mean, I know you don't know taxes and insurance and all of that, but just with those numbers, is that a decent return?
I love it. So here's what I would do is I would do a quick mortgage calculator, obviously, which you know how to do that. But I would go to Google and I would type in mortgage calculator. So for everyone listening, this is exactly what I do before I call Brad and ask him, hey, I found a property. Sometimes I write offers and then I tell him. So I go to mortgage calculator. You said it's 100 and let's say 115,000 based on
Yeah.
middle. So right now, a 30-year, Google automatically tells me it's 7.5% interest rate. Obviously, that's going to depend. That's something that Brad, if you guys are listening, when we talk about working with you on a consultation basis, he's really good about shopping, like what's the best bank for the property that you're specifically looking at, and helping you build basically your personal financial statement or your resume for the banks, because there are people paying for, I mean, we're like, it makes me get honestly like nauseous when I hear people paying like 18%, 19, 20, 25% for like hard money when there is
Mm.
money to be had. And yes, you have to go through a little bit more paperwork, but there's also the banks that they look at it as a business, the banks that we work with, not necessarily your income. So there are ways to structure this. And that's one of the things that we help with on the consultation side of things. So just a heads up, but $115,000 house.
So is it kind of like Jamie? Is it like it needs to cash flow essentially? Like you need to write it out in a business plan where it's going to cash flow
So
for the
we don't,
bank?
for you, it depends. Like for you, because your income is where it's at, I wouldn't look for cash flow. And
Okay.
that's where, and obviously depending on your goals and stuff, it's going to be different, but I'll kind of walk you through this right now.
Okay.
So 807
Okay.
is the monthly payment. What's an average tax
107?
bill on $100,000 house? 2,400?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably. It's like it's over 2.2% of the value.
So you're looking at about 20, yeah, so 2,400, so 200 bucks a month. So you're at 1,007. And then insurance is probably 100 bucks a month on $100,000 house.
Probably. Yeah.
So we're at 1,107 for your total payment on a 30-year. So 1,107, and if you can, if you can cash flow in this market with the rates that they are, you already are like, go buy it, right? When
Okay.
we first started investing, we actually didn't even, we looked for break even deals. Because it wasn't about the cash flow that we needed, because now if I take that $100,000 and they usually allocate, this is talk to your CPA, but usually allocate 20% to the land. So if you buy a $115,000 property times 0.8, you're looking at $92,000 divided by 27.5. So then $3,300 comes off of your taxable income that year. So if you're in a 30% tax bracket times 0.3, you're saving $1,000 a year. And this is where depreciation gets really magical when you look at that. Now you can say, maybe it makes more sense to buy a $200,000 property and not cash flow as much, or to lose $25 a month, because you need to look at the depreciation as income coming back to you. Because that's a huge part of investing. And I know there's lots of people out there just talking about, we need, you want to make $300 a door, you have to have cash flow. But when you're self-employed, especially as an active real estate agent, this is active income for you. And so there you get depreciation, and the actual income, the rental income that you get off of it is treated as active income, not passive income. So you are like double benefiting from owning rental properties. And I wish somebody would have told me this in real estate school, because I learned this again, I was an accidental landlord. We just happened to rent our own home out. And I saw this on our tax return the next year, and I started asking questions. And then Brad was doing loans, and so he understood depreciation. And that was actually like a cool thing to be able to he probably thought I knew more than I knew. And he wanted to be an investor. And then once we came together and we really understood all this tax benefit stuff, we're like, well, shit, when I got to 250,000 in income, I was like, all right, well, how many rentals do we need to own? How do I pay zero taxes? And that was really what now when I look at our pro forma and stuff, I'm like, we have a really pretty check coming from the IRS right now. We're just waiting on it because the IRS, we have to pay them quickly. They don't have to pay us quickly.
Right. But I can't even imagine getting money back. I mean, like I haven't got money back from the IRS in 9 years. And every year I owe
Yeah,
money every
we
year.
never want you to write a check to the IRS again.
That's awesome. I don't want to.
Write a check to the title company that goes to the seller, and then don't pay the IRS, because
Yeah.
that's the win. And that's where,
Well,
when we look at the stuff that we've had to do, it's like we've had issues and maintenance issues. But then when we look at the return on our time and our investment from real estate, even after doing some of the crappy things that we've had to do as a landlord, I would never change it.
well, and my goal is to get where you are at, where we are buying it consistently, every year looking for the good
Yeah.
deals, where we can market that we buy ugly houses
Yeah.
and that will land us in the listing appointment and give options like you do. I mean, like you even shared with me, you have other agents call you and say, hey, can you buy this from my
Yeah.
seller so you don't have to do contingency? Like that's so cool. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's fun to be known in your market for that. What I was
Mhm.
going to touch on one final thing as you said that, but so I was going to, just with the depreciation, when you start to calculate, it's like, do you want three $100,000 houses, or would it make sense to buy a fourplex or a triplex that maybe is 300,000, so that you have, one roof, one HVAC, and maybe depending on obviously how it's set up, but then you've got the depreciation on a larger amount. So if you're trying to, let's say from a tax strategy, some something I would have done differently is instead of buying 10, $100,000 houses, I probably would have worked harder to get maybe up three, $200,000 houses or four, whatever that is. I can't-
Well, hindsight, I
math
wish I
skills
had
are
bought
not
the
something.
15 unit complex that I had listed because I think it sold for in the 400s. It might have been 420 or something like that. Yeah.
That's insane. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So there's deals to be had for
Yeah, there
sure.
are.
So anyway, love it.
Well, this was awesome. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thanks
And
for having me on.
I think we need to maybe do a couple follow-up episodes because we've got some other good stories to dig into when
Yeah,
with your like awesome boss mom mode and running a team and having the rental experience and all the things.
absolutely. I would be honored. I would be
Yes.
honored.
And then how do people find you?
So you can find me by going to Instagram. You can go to Real Estate Mega Moms. It's like real underscore, underscore between all of the words. You can find me on Facebook, Jessica Hensley, TikTok, Jessica Hensley. Um, you can go to my website, realestatemegamoms.com. And then the book that you're talking about, you can go to Amazon and you can type in Micro Team Mega Results, how to multiply your time and income without hiring another agent or splitting your commission. Jamie and I run our team like we found out almost the exact same.
Yes.
So, but I wrote a book about it and have it down to a science. So anybody
Yes.
can run it like we do.
Yes. And her program is amazing. So highly recommend to anyone looking to scale their real estate business and their income. Well, thank you. All right. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We hope you'll hit that subscribe button to stay in touch. Also, join our Facebook group at Building Legacy Wealth Through Real Estate to find out more about what we do and what we offer. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.